from 1992, starring none other than Corey Feldman. And Feldman is talking about his sobriety. If you've seen Feldman a lot on the internet lately, it may be because of this lead session that he performed while on stage at Loserville, the Limp Bizkit tour. Now, before we proceed with the full episode, which I will play uninterrupted, let's meet our cast of characters. Let's find out who's who in the Sally Jessy Raphael Zoo for this episode of the Sally Jessy Raphael Show. First up, we'll have Mindy Feldman. That's Corey's sister. She was also an actor, and she's appearing on the show to discuss how Corey's drug use affected her. She lived with him for a short while. She was also a member of the Mickey Mouse Club and appeared on stage at Disneyland in 1977. Mindy also tried her hand at acting as a child, and then later on as a teenager, she appeared in an unfortunately deleted scene from hit movie Say Anything with John Cusack.
I really like this guy a lot, yeah. But he never called me. But a friend of his called me and asked me out. But if I don't call him, then he's going to think I'm not interested or something. But if I go out with his friend...
Don't go out with either of them. They're both, I'm telling you, they're assholes.
But I really like him. But then again, I like his friend, too.
Don't go out with either of them. My advice.
As an adult, Mindy would appear in South Beach Academy in 1996. Check this out.
Okay, come on, girl. Come on, sexy. Come on, you love that camera. You want that camera. It is your friend. You make love to that camera. Okay, come on. Come on. Okay, sexy. I want sexy. I want you to want that camera. Everybody wants you. You are the sexiest things in the world. Sexy legs. The right legs. Oh, look at this, my legs. Okay, very good. Hey, having fun. You're happy. Cut.
The next guest to appear on the show is Brion James. Now, you may recognize him. He is an accomplished character actor. He is credited with saving Corey's life, at least according to the show. He's also Corey's sponsor. Here's James playing Leon Kowalski in Blade Runner.
Is this the test now?
Yes. You're in a desert walking along in the sand when all of a sudden you look
What one?
What?
What desert?
Doesn't make any difference what desert. Is completely hypothetical.
But how come I'd be there?
Maybe you're fed up. Maybe you want to be by yourself. Who knows? You look down and you see a tortoise, Leon. It's crawling towards
Tortoise? What's that?
You know what a turtle is?
Of course.
Same thing.
About 7 years after appearing on the Sally Jessy Raphael Show, James would sadly die of a heart attack. Now here's an interview from the same year he died in 1999.
The big movie that most people know you for, we jump ahead a few years here to 1982, Blade Runner. Most people have seen you in Blade Runner. Now, I heard earlier today you were asked, did you know it was going to be popular? I seem to remember that the movie, I was a big fan of the movie when it came out, pretty much tanked when it came out, and now has acquired this incredible reputation in the years since. When you were
tanked too.
You tanked for them, but it's essentially.
Actually, it didn't tank, but it was moderate. People were expecting. They didn't know what to do. They thought it was going to be like a Star Warsy kind of faggy space movie. One of those. Oh, I'm sorry. That's coming out again. There's one of those guys is here today. He's on the gay floor. But sorry.
Yeah,
yeah, Blade Runner. Was okay, thanks. I drifted again.
Now, the last character to appear on this show is Mark London. He's a drummer, or at least he was. I don't know where he is today, and I couldn't really find anything about his whereabouts these days. But he did appear on the show as the person that Corey saved, even though he had only been sober for a couple of months. Here's a sample of the band that Mark played drums for, called Ampage, from 1987. In 1994, Mark would actually play drums for Corey on a song called Love Left. Check it out.
All right, we need to make people think with this one, so let's get some funk in there. Yeah.
Okay, well, now that you've all been brought up to speed, we're going to play the full episode now uninterrupted. It has also been enhanced, the audio and the video, for your viewing pleasure. So without further ado, let's go.
Corey was a child star who hung out in Hollywood's fast lane, making lots of movies and lots of money. Acting wasn't the only thing Corey was addicted to. At 13, it was marijuana. At 16, hooked on cocaine. And soon after, he was snorting heroin on a regular basis. Rock bottom came for Corey when he was arrested for the third time on drug possession charges, and he was forced into a drug rehab program. My special guest today is Corey Feldman, who's been clean and sober 16 months now.
I have to start off just by commenting on the fact that you said that I made my debut when I was 13. Actually, I've been in the business for 18 years.
Now, I told them to run this by you and make sure all the facts were correct.
You see what happens when you leave other people.
You
to
and I ought to
work.
just take it
That's right.
on our own.
That's right. No,
When I heard the story, I thought back, and I have to tell you something, because there are at least one or two people in the audience who watch us on a regular basis, right? If they've got a good memory, they're saying there are other child stars who sat in the chair where you're sitting. Mm-hmm. Dana Plato, Adam Rich, Todd Bridges, Danny Bonaducci. And I thought to myself, this story is beginning to sound very familiar. And then I thought, if you had... Well, they have a BMW, they have money, they have property, they have prestige, they have power, they have women and drugs, anything that a 16-year-old would ever dream of. And then I thought, I'd like a nickel for the times that I had a very famous female star sit here, talk to me. 2 hours later, somebody called and said she was arrested, and we had been doing a story on her being clean.
Wow.
Right? 2 hours after the show?
It's even worse.
I mean, couldn't you have waited till it aired?
I
mean, that's a mean thing to say.
I guess you had to play a rerun that day, huh?
I mean, no, but so you gotta be kind of gentle with me if I'm
All right. Well, let me take things into the situation at hand here. Firstly, people put so much emphasis on kids in the movie business who got into drugs and get arrested. I mean, that was like a big thing happening for a while, and I guess, I became part of a trend, which I wasn't really excited about by any stretch of the imagination. But, people put, first of all, so much emphasis on that because, of course, they're going to talk about it. We're actors.
Of course.
Kids get arrested for drugs and alcohol every day, but they don't put them on talk shows because they're not well known.
No, but you're famous.
Right. So that's the reason why you hear about it all the time.
Okay, but I'm very cynical because generally I can look at eyes, and I've talked to about 4 people who are telling me they're sober, and I know they're using as I'm sitting here talking to them.
Right.
And what does a person do when you're doing a talk show? You go back and say, well, let's throw this show away, and somebody come...
Right. Well, I can tell you about that from my own experience, because what happened to me was after my first arrest, I wasn't ready to get clean and sober. However, I felt so bad because I've always cared a lot for children. I've always cared about my fans. And when all my fans heard on the news and stuff what had happened to me, and I don't really put myself in the category with those other actors because like 9/10 of those actors who were arrested had one hit show when they were a kid and haven't worked since. I'd been working, continuously since then. And what happened for me is that when I got arrested and it was all over the news, I felt I had to let people know that I was okay. I felt like it was my job, and I wanted to let kids know, all right, it was a little thing, it happened, it's over. And that wasn't the case because I hadn't surrendered yet, and I wasn't really ready to clean myself up.
There was an article about you in People magazine. It said you're 13 years old and you're sleeping with a loaded gun under your pillow.
Sure.
Why would a 13-year-old be doing that?
Well, like I said, I'd been in the business, for 18 years. I mean, I started very young. The only thing I ever knew, I started stuffing my pain when I started doing movies. There's a big confusion about what we start stuffing our pain, because obviously the reason we do drugs and alcohol, every one of us, whoever does drugs and alcohol out there, we do it to stuff our pain, because we don't want to deal with our real feelings or our real emotions. So what happened was, at a very young age is when we really start stuffing our pain. The first time you go and you lock yourself up in your bedroom and watch TV for 2 days straight, or the first time you go into the refrigerator when your mom's not looking and stuff the chocolate cake down your face, that's when we start stuffing our pain, finding another way to fix ourselves. My way was through acting. I got to become somebody else. It was living in a fantasy world. It was my escape. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
What?
There are going to be people of an older generation than you that go, stuffing your pain? What are you talking about? Somebody 12 or 13? What kind of pain do these people have? And generations seem to have grown up without needing to stuff their... Now, I know that sounds like OF thinking.
I can tell you exactly
and
what
you can
that
tell me
is.
off for that.
No, I mean, that's totally logical thinking. And the problem is that there's a lot of people in America who still haven't come to terms with their feelings. You know what I mean? We stuff our pain over things. What's the very first thing your parents tell you when you're a little kid? They say, shh, don't cry, it's okay. Why shouldn't I cry? Why shouldn't I let that out? It's an important thing that kids need to talk about their feelings. Kids need to let them out when they're upset. Tell them what's going on. You know, too many parents in America don't pay attention to what's wrong with their kids. And that's why we have pain and we hold it inside and it builds up through our lifetime. And then we need to stuff it with something. All
right, we'll go back and talk about that, because I want to know if you have any more pain than, say, a generation ahead of you or a generation ahead of you. All right, we've got this gun. Whose gun is it?
Okay, well, my grandfather was in the war, and so he always had, like, his badges and his guns and stuff like that. And he had it in his drawer. And, I mean, you know, my childhood was different than other kids because I was in the business, and kids were jealous of me at school. They didn't like me. Girls wouldn't go out with me. I had an abusive household. My parents.
What's that mean?
Well, it means it was an abusive household. I mean,
okay.
I think.
Fair enough.
Pretty much leaves it up to the imagination. But my parents weren't ready to have the kind of situation that they had when I was born. And, I couldn't deal with it. I mean, I felt like all my life was pleasing other people. Nobody accepted me the way I was, and I didn't want to live anymore. And I would look up to God every day, and I would say, God, why did you do this to me? Why did you make me fat? Why did you make me ugly? Why am I different from the other kids? Why don't girls want to go out with me? And I would take this gun and I would hold it to my head every day, and I would get so close to pulling the trigger, and then I would throw it down, I would break down and cry, and I would just sit there and ask him, why?
And you're 13.
Yeah.
Was there anyone around who knew that was where it was at for you?
I think everybody around me was so into their own worlds that they didn't really see what was going on. I always looked at my life like from a viewer's point of view. You know what I mean? I was the audience watching the Corey Feldman show.
Yeah.
You know, and I would watch the abuse happening. I would watch kids at school treating me like they were. And I would think from an older person's perspective, I would go, God, I just wish that normal people could watch this situation and see what this kid is going through. This is not normal.
But there was
Normal
no one
kids don't have
there to say...
Well, there were people that tried to be supportive. My grandparents, my uncle, there were people that tried to be supportive. But what happened is I started making older friends. I would hang out with people that were like 25 or 30 years old because they could relate to me.
Okay. Now, you did Stand By Me, and is that when you started to use marijuana?
Yeah, that's the first time.
Tell me,
what?
I
was doing Stand By Me. There were a bunch of, local kids. And I actually got drunk and I could use marijuana for the first time when I was doing that movie because they wanted to see what it was like to get a kid, a famous person drunk for the first time. And like a good alcoholic, they were all drinking beers. They got me a 40-ouncer. I drank the whole thing. And I drank it straight down, and the only thing I remember was spinning on the railroad tracks going, this is the best thing I've ever felt in my life. And then the same thing happened with marijuana. They took me behind this old school, and they made a pipe out of this Coke can. They brought out 5 different kinds of weed.
Who's the they?
These kids, local kids.
When the movie is being filmed, these are the local people who lived in the town.
Right, that I was kind of, getting friends with. Because when you spend 3 months up there and you're a kid, you find other kids to hang out with. And they're like, hey, you ever smoked weed? And I was like, no, sounds great. Let's try it. And I did. And from then on, I said, this is my answer. I was the type of person that wanted to be 60 years old in a rocking chair smoking pot with my grandkids. I mean, that was my dream, you know.
Now, you're 13 and you're making this movie. Who was the adult caretaker for you?
At that time, I had what they call a set sitter, which is somebody who comes and, you know, sits on the set with you.
No member of your own family?
No.
And so there's no one there to say you're using? There's no
Well, they didn't know. I mean, you know, it only happened once or twice. And so it was, you know, at that point it was experimental. And I expect that kids are going to experiment with
So they might have said, oh,
alcohol.
he's such a cute kid and
He's experimenting. It's okay. You know.
Now,
I mean,
cocaine at 16?
Cocaine at 16, yeah. Now that, you know, that's a little different league there. See, I was the kind of kid, I mean, I was raised trying to be a good example for other kids. You know what I mean? I was kind of like your model kid.
Right.
I mean, you look at Macaulay Culkin, you know, and you don't think, oh, well, this kid's a drug addict. You think this is a model kid for America, right?
Right.
But now what happens when Macaulay Culkin starts going through things that everyday life kids go through, and all of a sudden he decides he wants to start experimenting, well, then what's going to happen? America's going to be shocked when 5 years later they hear Macaulay Culkin's a drug addict, right?
Yes, I think
so. It's the same
true.
kind of thing. It's like I was modeled as, you know, America's good boy, little kid, and I'd go out there and do the anti-drug things. And then I started wanting to experiment and find out what it was all about myself.
Now, your parents were divorced when you were 11, and you asked the court to emancipate you when you were 15?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yes, 15.
Right? Okay. Now, when you're emancipated at 15, that means you can have your own apartment,
Write your own checks.
your own car, your own everything.
Well, you can't have a car till you can 16. You can get a driver's license.
Yeah.
Doesn't change that.
So it's suddenly living like a grown-up
Yes.
at an age where some people might say you're not ready for it.
Right. And, you know, my parents went to court. They tried to fight the suit. They said I wasn't ready. And I said I needed to be. And I believe that I needed to be, still to this day, because I believe that I had to go through the things that I went through to get where I am today. If I hadn't gone through what I did, if I hadn't got arrested, I mean, it goes to every area of my life. If I hadn't gone through what I went through, then I wouldn't be the strong person that I am now, because I've been able to get in touch with my feelings. I've been able to take time out of my life and learn who Corey Feldman, the person, is.
Which you
because
hadn't
I
done
didn't know.
before.
I did not know. I was raised all my life to be something for other people. I was never raised for me, to find out what I was about, what I wanted.
All right, let's go to heroin. From cocaine to why heroin?
Okay, well, here's the thing I didn't finish telling you. You know, I was the kind of kid that I would start off, you know, and I was like, I'll have a drink, but I would never smoke pot, you know? And then a couple joints later, I said, oh, all right, well, I'd smoke pot, but I would never do coke. And then a couple 8 balls later, I'd go, well, a little coke, but I would never do heroin, you know? And then what happened was I was in a relationship with this girl, and she was, you know, she broke my heart. She lived with me for like 3 months, and I found out that she was like stripping and seeing other people, and it really devastated me. And I was off coke for like a year at this point. And I said to this guy, who was the really bad influence in my life, I said to him, you know, I need something to mess me up. And he said, well, why don't you use, you know, some coke? And I said, well, coke doesn't work anymore, because all it does is make me more intense and more upset, and I'm going to be more depressed. And he said, well, pot. And I said, pot's not strong enough. He said, well, how about some heroin? I said, I'm not going to stick a needle in my arm. He goes, you don't have to. You can snort it just like cocaine. And I said, really? And that was the end of it. You know, that was the end of it. And 2 years later, I was arrested for doing 25 balloons of heroin a day.
Now, I get an awe from the audience, meaning that's a lot. The man who lived with you, is this the same fellow?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about him.
Well, right around the time of my emancipation, I became close with this person who seemed like he was really there for me. And when you're young and naive and you're looking for people, and as I told you earlier, I always had older friends, people to look up to. And this was the person that I thought, this is a really cool guy. And I thought he just liked me for me. He actually liked me because he was using me. And at that time, I was getting very famous, and I had all that prestige and stuff, and he wanted to be a part of that. And what happened was, you know, he moved in with me. I started paying him to be my assistant $400 a week. He was living at my house for free, and it was at that point when he started getting me very loaded and he started molesting me.
Sexually?
Sexually.
So when you say using me, it was living off you and using your body.
No, I mean using me for things that he could get on a prestige level, you know, hanging out with a star. But at the same time, he used me in that way. It just, you know, wasn't like on an everyday basis.
When he started to use you sexually, were you too drugged to say no? I mean, what did you do?
No, I was a 15-year-old kid living on my own for the first time, and this guy had been my friend for like a year. You know, I mean, imagine your best friend, the only person that you can really trust or look up to, and you're a kid and he's older than you. You kind of look up to this person. And when all of a sudden they come in the middle of the night when you're asleep and start doing things to you, it's a very scary thing.
What's it like the next morning?
I hated him. I would be so mean to him and so rude to him, and you know, I would lay there and pretend to be asleep when it was happening, and then the next day I would try to give him the vibe of how much, you know, like I knew, and I hated him for it. And it wasn't until like a year later I was able to confront him about it and tell him if he ever tried it again, I would never talk to him. And then he did try it again, and I kicked him out of my house.
And that was the end of that? Did you ever see him again?
Yeah, and then I kind of let him back in as a friend for a little while. I know, it's dumb, right? But then he stole from me, and you know, we were doing heroin together, and he started writing checks out of my checkbooks under my name and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Once again, this is the first time you're talking about this. Why weren't there people to help you? Why wasn't there somebody around?
Because, you see, when we're drug addicts, we surround ourselves with the kind of people that we are, generally. You know, now that I'm a clean person, now that I'm a good person, I have all good people around me. When we're doing bad things, we involve ourselves with bad people. It's like if you're using drugs and you walk into a club, you're going to spot the drug dealer. You know, am I right or wrong about this?
Okay.
You know what I mean? When you're looking for clean people because you're the only one there that's clean, you're going to find who's clean to help you out.
Okay. When we come back, I don't know if we can call this one of the good people, but I think we can. This is Corey's sister, Mindy, and she lived with him for a while he was on drugs. She's going to be the good person, and we're going to find out what he did to himself and to her. Stay with us.
I'd like to say to all children, please stay off drugs. Do not use drugs. You can see how serious it is. So please keep the faith in God and keep faith in me and say a prayer for me. It's my 1 month birthday. I'm clean 4 weeks.
All right. So was it as hard as you thought it was going to be?
Well, truthfully, the first week was a drag. But, thanks to all you strange people who've gotten me to this point, I feel good. I feel clean. For the first time in my life, in a long time, I feel like I'm in control.
Well, that's from a movie, and that's not real life. When Corey Feldman co-starred with Drew Barrymore and Tatum O'Neal in the TV movie 15 and Getting Straight, that was the name of the movie. In real life, he was 15 and getting high. We're talking with Corey Feldman, who battled a 5-year addiction to alcohol and cocaine and heroin. And he's talking today, probably for the first time before an audience, about his recovery. Joining us, we got to the point where the people around you, what's their attitude, what happens, what's their effect on you, and what's your effect on them. This is Corey's older sister by 3 years. Corey is 20, Mindy is 23. She has also led a life as an actress, but she's gone back to college, just graduated, and now going to become rejoining.
I'm starting to do it again, yeah.
Okay. Mindy, a few years after your parents divorced, you and Corey, who I guess was emancipated at that time, lived together in an apartment for several months. What was it like living with Corey?
Where do I start? Well, actually, what happened, first when he got emancipated, one of the conditions that he could get emancipated, that the judge had said, was that we moved into an apartment together, because I was over 18, I was 19, and I was going to college, and they thought, I guess, that I was fairly responsible. So I took that as a responsibility. He was my little brother, and I, of course, wanted to help him out and take care of him and kind of supervise him. Not that I knew all that much myself at 19 years old.
Did you know he was doing drugs?
No, not at first.
Not at first?
No, when we first moved in together, I had no clue. I mean, when we first moved in together, you know, I knew he was kind of wild, but I thought, you know, oh, he can be handled and he'll learn and he'll mellow out. Wasn't like that.
All right, stop your mind for a moment. People are asking themselves, how bad was these two kids' childhood? From the sister who wasn't using, how bad was your childhood? How bad was his child?
Okay, well, when people say that, when people say abusive childhood, this and that, there's a lot of different forms of abuse. There's a lot of people that could look at our family and say, well, you know, my family was just as bad or my family was worse. There were a lot of things that happened. You know, our parents were very young when they had us. You know, they were entertainers themselves. And, you know, that's how we were bred, as an entertainment family. Our entire family was like that. And they did the best they could. You know, it wasn't as though they didn't care about us, because they did. It's just in their own way.
Okay, I'll buy that, because that's not this black or white statement. How bad was it living with him?
He was irresponsible. He was into drugs. He had problems paying the bills, and at the time, I had just gotten some money, you know, from when I was younger, because I was 19. So I was using that, and he hadn't gotten his money yet when we first moved into the apartment. So I kind of used that money to pay for the first couple months' rent and the down payment and all that kind of thing. And, you know, I lost a lot of money and got evicted and that kind of thing. But he, you know, got to the point where he wouldn't come home all night, or he'd come home at 4 a.m. with a bunch of friends and be really loud and obnoxious, and I'd go out there and be like, can you be quiet? And he just kind of,
Was there a moment at which you knew he was using?
I was pretty naive for a while, until some of my friends who'd been around it were over, and they're like, what are you doing? You know, look at him. And I just wanted to believe in my own heart that he was going to be okay, you know. I thought, yeah, he's experimenting, he's doing this and that, but I didn't know how to get through to him. You know, I mean, I'd watch him do things, and I'd watch him act a certain way, and I'd watch him be irresponsible, and it drove me nuts, but I couldn't do anything.
Was there a moment which you wanted to kill him?
Then, many moments when I wanted to kill him.
We had that kind of a childhood.
How good a liar was he?
Oh, excellent.
How good?
He could look you straight in the eye and say, I love you so much. I would never do anything to hurt myself or to hurt anybody else. And I would never do drugs, and, you know, and life means more to me than that, and this and that carried on for years. That wasn't just when he was 16.
Didn't you reach a point where you go, he's of?
Oh, yeah. I mean, over and over and over again. I mean, you know, and then if you want to believe in somebody, it gets to the point where, you know, when they keep telling you, I'm being honest, I really am better, and you want to believe it so bad, you know? So you start believing it after a while, and then all of a sudden they do it again and again and again. And you don't know when, you know, the time to stop believing and start believing ends and begins.
When we come back, we're going to meet the actor who Corey says saved his life. Hear about Corey's love life, too. Don't go away.
Gail's daughter is so vain, she gave herself whiplash tossing back her hair.
3 weeks she was in a neck brace, Sally.
But Deborah Gibson will help moms who say, my teenage daughter is so conceited. Next, Sally.
Talking today to Corey Feldman, who is addicted to cocaine and heroin. And we're going to skip to the end of the story, although a lot happened in between. He was arrested 3 times and has been in a rehab program, and he's sharing his story for the first time with our audience, which is made up, for the most part, of recovering teenage addicts and some of their parents. Corey, I've heard that being around people who have been through what you've been through makes it easier. Is that true?
This is very true, and I'm really grateful that the audience here is recovering alcoholics and addicts. First of all, because I'm always, yeah, give yourselves an applause. Because it's not only great for me to be able to relate with them and know that they know what I'm talking about, but it's so nice because right away I feel like when I'm in a room with so many people that are on the same spiritual plane as me,
feel the energy.
You can feel it, you know what I mean? You feel like you're okay.
We want you to meet Brion James. Now, You probably recognize him from 48 Hours, or one of, I think he's made 50 movies and done 100 television credits. And he's, along with the latter-day Lon Chaney, a man of 1,000 faces and 1,000 voices. He always looks different. He's usually the villain. Most villains that I've ever met in real life have been teddy bears, villain actors. Brion also shared his success in Hollywood with a 25-year addiction to drugs and alcohol. Corey says Brion saved his life. How, Corey?
Well, you know, I owe my main parts of my sobriety to two things. One is Cry Help, which is a treatment facility that I went through, and they were so wonderful to me. I mean, they're very strict, very hard. It's a county facility, but that's what saved my life, is going through there. Now, while I was going through there, the only person that I could talk to was Brion. When I first met Brion, when I would look for a sponsor, he was my sponsor, he still is, somebody to kind of talk to, somebody that I can do the steps with and get through all that. I would always look for somebody that I could manipulate well. So I was with my last sponsor, who I had manipulated greatly, and I'd gotten kicked out of Cry Help for that reason. And then I saw Brion. Now, here's this huge, towering 6'5" guy, and I said, I'm not going to be able to manipulate this one. And it wasn't me that asked him to sponsor me, because I would have never done that.
No, you wanted a patsy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something spoke through me that said, you've got to ask this guy. And I did. Will you sponsor me? and he goes, yeah, you got 3 things you got to do. Da, 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 da. And I went, oh, this is going to be fun. And the guy saved my life. I mean, he is the softest, warmest, most wonderful person. He's there for me 24 hours a day, no matter what. And that's what I needed, and that's what I still need. And that's this
Brion,
guy. Yes.
People often wonder were you using heavily for 25 years?
Off and on.
Often.
I mean, from alcohol to drugs to cocaine to heroin to all of the above. And there were heavy periods of using, and then periods were not as heavy. But yeah.
Making 50 movies, movies are very hard work.
They are.
How does a guy act full-time for a living and is still...
Well, I came from a family where you get up and you go to work no matter what happens. And
Even
I started working when I was 5 years old, and so I developed a Jekyll and Hyde life. I had 2 lives. There was the guy that went out and was crazy, and then there was the guy that showed up. I always showed up for work, and I specialize in abnormal behavior, which is very comfortable for an addict or an alcoholic. And so they wanted somebody psychotic. They called me. So I was able to get into those roles. So I always was able to work, and I tried to hide my addiction for a great deal of time. And eventually, I've been sober almost 7 years. Jekyll and Hyde became the same person.
Okay, for 25 years, was your private life hell?
Yes.
You were making movies and stealing cars or stealing car radios?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
You're a movie actor by day, car radio stealer by night?
Yeah.
Man, that's psychotic.
Yes, absolutely. Schizophrenic behavior. What happens is when you use alcohol and drugs, it takes you into a life of stealing and lying and crime and away from your family and your friends. And there was a period of my life where I was a booster. Some of you may know what that is.
A booster?
A booster is a blatant stealer. A black man and myself were a salt and pepper team, we were called. And I lived in Southwest L.A., and I would go out and steal out of department stores, cars, anything I could get to get my fix. And then I had an answering service, and I'd call in to see if I had any auditions for film. So there was this incredible change of lifestyle that I went with 25 years, but I lived in hell for
But
years.
basically, they say the longer you're addicted, the harder it is to overcome it.
Absolutely.
Very quickly, what was the moment that turned you around, or was there a moment?
There was a moment. I finished a film called Enemy Mine back in 1985, and within a month I'd spent $40,000 on drugs. My addiction was up to $5,000 a week, shooting heroin and cocaine. I was on the street. I was ripping off car radios in Venice. I was in the back of a VW bus, and I was so helpless and sick and tired of, I was bankrupt in spiritually, financially, physically, morally, every area of my life. And I just had it. I surrendered. I said the 4 easy words: God, I need help. I mean, actually, that's all that it took. And I put myself into a recovery house and cold turkeyed, and I've been sober ever since. And that was the beginning of my new life.
But you had his number.
I had his number. Yes, it takes one to know one.
Right.
When I saw Corey, actually, Corey and I were on one of those talk shows. 2 years ago, I was doing publicity for another 48 Hours, and Corey and I were on the same show. He came on and said he was sober. I saw this guy, and I went, I don't buy it.
Did you tell the people who were watching the talk show, I didn't buy it, or did you backstage go, I didn't buy it?
Well, to myself, I said I didn't buy it, and I went out, and I wasn't on the show to talk about recovery. And they asked me, they said, we understand you're also recovering. And at the time, I said, well, it's great that anybody can come forward and talk about that. But what happened with Corey and I, because of that incident, because he wasn't, is we made a deal when I sponsored him that wait till you have a year. Get a year under your belt, then go public. Because until you kind of get a little owning of your sobriety after a year, then go out and let people know. Because then you put some time in. People come out after 2 weeks and say, I'm sober. It's not enough time.
So you're sitting there surrounded by somebody who had your number and somebody who wasn't going to admit it. She probably had your number too, but she wasn't going to admit it. And we didn't get a moment to go back to the love life. So we will, and we will meet a young man who Corey is helping to stay sober, and a therapist who has some advice for families who are living with guys like you. He says show business is to blame. I don't believe it. We'll be right back. If you are just joining us, where have you been? If you're just joining, I always wanted to say that. We're talking with actor Corey Feldman, who said he had it all in Hollywood at a very young age. He had fame and friends and fortune, and lost it at the hands of drugs. And talking today for the first time about his sobriety. We've met Corey's sister, Mindy, who gave us a little clue as to what it was like to be the family member, and actor Brion James, who must be an amazing man, the hippie gangster himself, using drugs for 25 years. And he has sponsored Corey through his recovery process. I didn't get to the love life. Did you have an affair with Drew Barrymore? One should always ask a question.
Yeah.
Because we saw in that movie that...
It was right after. That wasn't Drew they showed anyway. That was...
No, yeah.
It was right after that movie. We went out for a couple months, and I mean, it wasn't like a heavy thing, and we weren't using drugs together. Any good gossip like that. So.
But you were both using drugs.
Well, she was going to meetings when I was going out with her.
Oh,
when she did that movie, she was actually clean.
Oh, okay.
And she was doing meetings and stuff, and she would come over to my house and she would see me smoking pot, and she'd be like, you really shouldn't do that. And I'd drop her off at meetings and go, yeah, you have fun.
Now, talk to me about Vanessa.
Oh, okay. Well, we were married for 3 years. We went to Vegas and
Vanessa
eloped.
who?
Her name was Vanessa Marcel.
Right.
And we went to Vegas and eloped, and we kept it really secretive. We didn't tell anybody about it. And now we're separated.
Short and sweet.
That's it, huh?
Brian likes it.
So much for his love life. Corey is helping someone. Brian is helping him stay sober, and he's sitting next to you. Will you tell me a bit about Mark?
Okay. Well, I help a lot of people. I mean, that's really that's what my life's about today. I like to go to recovery houses, I like to go to hospitals, I like to speak, and I also like to take guys out. I have my own meeting that I run. I'm the secretary of it. It's a step study, and I pick up guys. And I also like to help people in the entertainment business because they can relate with me. So I help out, other actors or musicians who are in hospitals. I get them out of there. Adam Rich actually is one that I'm doing some work with, and he told me about you.
Yes, give him my regards.
But anyway, with Mark... Mark's a guy that was a friend. He's brothers to a friend of mine. A guy that's a good friend of mine. It's his little brother. And you know, he would tell me, well, I'm trying to help him out. He's having problems. He's been trying to get sober for 4 years. And I said, well, okay. People are raising their hands. It's confusing. Stop! Everybody just stop! Okay.
You can go there.
So when I heard about Mark, I said, well, let me meet him. And what happened was we ran into each other at a meeting, and I told him to come to my house. Now, when he came to my first meeting, he made some really tacky, off-the-wall remark. Something about a girl that was sitting in the corner. She was the only girl there, and he said something really rude to her and embarrassed her. And I said, I got to work with this guy. So I got him and I pulled him aside and I said, do you have a sponsor? He said, no. And I said, well, then, you know, I want to help you. And ever since then, I've seen him change from this crazy, neurotic kid who didn't want to do anything to a really wonderful guy who does the same thing and helps other people.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. That was a heck of an introduction there. That's really nice. Thank you.
What did you think of him when you first met him?
When I first met Corey? I've heard about him through my brother, and I've been trying on and off to get sober for the past 4 years. And I would, you know, go in for 2 months, and then I'd go back out, and then I'd get sober for 2 weeks and go back out. It's called slipping, which means sobriety losing its priority. That's what SLIP stands for. And I was practicing that for 4 years. And this last time, when I decided
Did you hate yourself because of that? I mean, what's the feeling?
No, I didn't hate myself.
Like
I just wasn't through.
Diet and gets off?
I didn't get into the guilt thing. I just knew I just wasn't through. You know, I wasn't in the media like Corey, so when I slipped, it wasn't a media event. It was just, you know, I wanted to get high again, and I wasn't ready. And I really wasn't. I was not ready to get honest. I was not ready to look at myself and see the character defects and the problems in my life before I started using, which were the, you know, things that caused me to use in the first place. And that's what you have to do when you're ready. You have to look at the problems that caused you to start using. And I wasn't ready. So when I was ready, I went to this meeting, and I'd been sober for 3 months just on my own, just because I was just so sick of the whole scene. And I said, this is a time where normally I slip. I said, I'm going to get a sponsor now. I'm going to get some help. And
good thing to
go all
do.
the way. And I'd talked to Corey, and he said that maybe he should help me out temporarily until I found someone. And it worked out really well, and we really relate good, and so.
You're a musician?
Yeah, I'm a drummer. I hang out with musicians. That's what they say.
Let's see, are there a lot of sober drummers?
Sober drummers? There's a lot of sober everything.
Starting a new trend.
Yes.
Yes.
You have to stand up. Oh, God. All right. You don't have to stand up.
No, I wanted to ask you, I'm in a 12-step program also, and I have my mood swings. I wanted to know what kind of mood swings you go through even though you're clean today.
Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. That means halt. It means shut everything off and just stop. We go through all of them, you know?
Yes.
All the mood swings.
I would like to know, is the person that he helping sober? And if so, how long has he been sober? How long has he been clean?
Mark, to you?
Jerry? Is your name Jerry? What's your name?
Mine?
Yeah, yours.
Mark.
Mark.
Yeah. But you
Are
can call me
sober
Jerry.
and how long have you been sober?
I'll be sober 6 months in 2 weeks. It'll be 6 months.
So we will get to our therapist in a moment who says it's the fault of show business. And you'll have 4 people in show business take you on for that. We'll be right back. Are you feuding with your fiance's family over who is going to pay for what at the wedding? Call me. We'd like to hear your side. Joining us now is Jerry Scarano, who is a therapist who specializes in adolescent addictions. He is also the executive director of the Seafield Pines Hospital in New Hampshire. Jerry, I have a quote here that says, show business is to blame for Corey's problems, achieved income, notoriety at a young age. How can a kid be humble when being treated like an adult? All adolescents have egos the size of Wyoming. Now, okay, is it really?
Well, I don't know if I said Wyoming. I may have said Miami. But
Same thing. But it is show business.
Well, I think there are a lot of challenges in a celebrity achieving and maintaining sobriety. when I look at adolescence, I see kids with very big egos, as it should be. I see youngsters that are a bit shy in the area of coping skills and impulse control and things like that.
Question that I have left over from the first segment.
Shoot.
Why this generation, not the 4,000 ones that went before? I mean, what are they putting up with that they didn't have to put up with?
I think we just didn't know about it.
Didn't know about it.
There were cases. Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland.
Yeah,
You
but
heard about
not in the numbers.
See, the way I see it, my story, I'm straight 16 months also tomorrow. And my story is pretty much the same as Corey's, almost word for word, except for a few incidents minus the fame and fortune. Show business is just an added problem. But people that are average, everyday kids have the same problems. I mean, I started at 11 years old, and this is the first time I've been straight this amount of time since that time. And I wasn't in show business. It's the same thing for everybody, not just the rich and famous.
Exactly.
Yes?
Yes, I was referring back to, what were we talking about just a minute? I lost my track. I was listening to him. The generation. I think also you're seeing it more prevalent in societies that we are multi-generational dysfunctional from the family life, that there's abuse in families that's been going on, and it's surfacing more as it does in every alcoholic and addict. We're at the tip of the iceberg of what the problem is. As recovering alcoholics and addicts, we have to go back and do an inventory of our lives to find out what happened to us that brought us to the point where we had to drink and use to cope pain. So it comes back to childhood.
Take a break. We'll be right back. Jerry's advice to parents and family is to be detached. Don't be there to bail them out. Let them hit bottom. Is that true?
That's true. Absolutely.
Okay.
Corey, I really commend you for everything that you've went through so far. We all have our own problems, and we all deal with them in our own way. But how do you feel like you're going to succeed for the rest of your life in this?
What's going to keep it green, as they say in the business?
To remember that this has nothing to do with me, and it's all about God. To me, my life today is about working, letting God use me as a channel to speak through. And as long as I keep my ego out of it, then my career will be fine, because it will be exactly how he wants it to be, to use me.
By the way, Mark was a non-functioning person as much as Brion was a functioning person. Some people can do it with drugs and some can't.
Hi, Corey. I wanted to know if you would come out to Apple II out in Ronkonkoma and do a lecture for us.
Sure. She put it right down there, didn't she?
Yeah. As long
Somebody
as
else had their hands up. Quick.
I would like to ask Corey a question. I would like to know, how did drugs interfere with your business career?
You know, I did a pretty good job, like Brion did, of keeping my business career together. I mean, but I was going up and showing up on the set on drugs, you know. It didn't really matter to me. I would just get...
But a lot of the money went that way.
Yeah. I mean, I was broke as a result of it.
She wants to know if you're broke.
Yeah.
If you'd like to order a video cassette of Sally's show for only $19.95, call 1-800-FOR-SALLY. 1-800-FOR-SALLY for video cassettes only. For a transcript, send $3 to 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
We would like to thank all our guests for appearing today, and I want to mention you have to watch for Brion James's new movie called The Player. And Corey Feldman has 2 movies coming up, Meatballs 4 and Round Trip to Heaven, all to be released this spring. Thank you.
Some members of our audience will receive, and a promotional fee has been provided by...
No-nonsense pantyhose, as beautifully put together as the women who wear them. No nonsense. For perms only hair care, professionally formulated to maintain and style permed, colored, and chemically treated hair. Crisp, clean, very masculine. Wear it and be victorious. Adidas, aftershave and cologne, the essence of sports.
The Boss, the low-cost ESP from Eureka. It can cut your cleaning time in half. The Boss from Eureka, the power to sweep you off your feet.
Doing it? Well, I don't put myself in sticky situations generally. I mean, things like smoking pot or drinking, people do that around you all the time. You don't really have control over it. But you know if there's going to be coke happening at a party or heroin happening at a party, and you just don't go there.